Hello, everybody. Hopefully this is recording. This is me doing something new that I haven't done before. All right, so I'm going to try to use this Zoom software to share my screen to give you guys an introduction to using SPSS. Now, again, if you are watching this and you want to learn how to use SPSS, great, continue watching it. I would love for all of you guys to learn SPSS. It's incredibly useful software. I've seen lots and lots of job postings that say that knowledge of SPSS is a plus, all right? So knowing it is definitely not going to hurt you, all right? But if you are just overwhelmed, you have absolutely no desire to learn SPSS, then you do not have to watch this, all right? I'm just posting it for those of you guys who would like to see it. All right, to work in SPSS, obviously you need to have SPSS downloaded and installed and licensed on your computer. If you are trying to do that and you're having difficulty with it, please send me an email and I will direct you back to those instructions that were on my Ole Miss that had the licensing code and the screenshot by screenshot instructions for downloading it. But today in this video, I'm making an assumption that you already have it downloaded and installed. All right, so once you have SPSS downloaded, installed, and licensed, all right, remember you have to license it so that SPSS knows you've paid for it and lets you use it, you are going to need to come to Blackboard, to our class. Under Content is a folder called SPSS Files, and inside of that is a folder called SPSS Class Exercise Files. All right, if you have access to a printer, not in this video, but in a separate video, we will go through this worksheet. I'll go through this worksheet with you, so you might want to print this worksheet when you have access to a printer, but you are going to need this SPSS file, all right, in order to proceed. All right, so click on this and download the file. I already have it downloaded down here. All right, so when you open the file, it will look like this. All right, SPSS looks kind of like Excel, all right, in the sense that it's a database software. So we have all of these cells that have our data in the cells. This specific data is responses from 205 students. We have our first column here, shows our respondent number. These are 205 students who were students at Penn State University in the 1990s, and their statistics professor gave them a survey that asked them about their gender, their ear piercing, whether or not, how many ear piercings they have, whether or not they have a tattoo, how many CDs they own, their actual height, what height they would like to be in inches. This question asked about who they make friends with more easily, same sex, opposite sex, or it doesn't matter, they make friends with everyone. And over here is a variable that assesses whether they think that looks or personality are more important in evaluating members of the opposite sex. And now that I think about that, I realize that I need to open that worksheet so that you guys can see something. All right, so sorry if a bunch of random other stuff comes up on my computer screen while we do this. Here is the actual survey that respondents would have seen. This is that worksheet that I was talking about that's on Blackboard that you can download. Here is the survey that people filled out. So here's all those questions I was just talking about. Are you male or female? How many ear piercings do you have? Do you have tattoos? How many CDs? How tall are you? How tall would you like to be? Who do you make friends with most easily? And when you evaluate a potential romantic partner, what's more important, looks or personality? On this second page, we have what we were talking about in the data coding and editing video, a code book. All right, so the code book tells us the variable name that shows up in the SPSS. Sorry, let me get all of these screens sort of adjusted here. All right, so in the data set, we see that we have a variable called sex. And this tells us that that variable name sex corresponds to the question about subject gender. And these zeros and ones mean if you see a 0, that means male. If you see a 1, that means female. All right, for the ear piercings variable, it says we have this variable name with an unusual sort of spelling. The variable description is that it's the total number of ear piercings, and the number that's been entered is whatever number was provided by the subject on this line, right? Because it was a ratio response measure. All right, so this is the data set that we're working with. Down here, there are a bunch of questions that we can answer, and these questions will make more sense once you watch the inferential statistics videos. All right, but if you have not gotten to those videos yet, we're not going to get there yet. We are going to focus just on the first two things in this worksheet, which you don't actually need to have the worksheet open and printed in order to do this. I will keep it open on my screen so that you can tell what we're doing here. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to identify which variables are nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. That will help us later when we're doing some of these analyses. All right, so if we look up here at the survey, we can see that the nominal variables are gender, all right, this is a nominal response scale. Whether or not people have tattoos, that's a nominal response scale. And who people make friends with most easily, all right, this is a nominal response scale. We do not have any ordinal measures because we're not learning how to do data analysis for ordinal measures. In evaluating a potential romantic partner, this is an interval response scale, all right? So this looks variable is our one interval measure. And then we have several ratio response scales. How many ear piercings do you have? How many CDs do you own? How tall are you in reality? And how tall would you like to be? All right, all of these are measured on a ratio response scale. Okay. Let's look at doing some things in SPSS now, all right, and get a little bit more acquainted with SPSS now that we understand this data set and what we're looking at in here. When you look at a data set in Excel or in SPSS, right, anywhere, the way that the data set is structured is that each row in a data set corresponds to one person's answers. All right, so this is respondent number 1. They have indicated that they are female. They have 2 ear piercings, 0 tattoos, 25 CDs. They are, 5'10". They would like to be 5'10". They make friends with the opposite sex more easily, and they think on this scale that looks and personality are roughly equally important. All right, so this is one person's answers to every question on the survey, and we have 205 rows of data because there were 205 completed surveys. All right, and so in each column, we have a single variable from a survey. This is all of people's answers to the gender question, all of people's answers to the ear piercings question, etc. All right, there are several key ways that SPSS differs from Excel. The first way that SPSS differs is that you cannot do equations inside of the cells. All right, so if you double click on a cell, you can get a cursor, and I could delete this one and type in another number if I wanted to. You could directly enter your data into SPSS, although I find that SPSS runs more slowly than Excel, so it's much easier to manually enter all of your data in Excel if you're having to manually enter data and then open the Excel file in SPSS. All right, but so while you can get a cursor in here, you could not type in something like this equals, this cell plus this cell, the way that you can do in Excel. You cannot do operations inside of the cells. Instead, SPSS is completely menu driven. All right, so we have these menu options up here. Most of the things that we're going to do are going to be inside of this analyze menu. All right, and so we're going to look at descriptive statistics. We're going to look at comparing means. That's where all of our t-tests are. And we're going to look way down here, buried in the menus is a chi-square test. All right, we're going to learn about that too. Oh, and correlation is up here. All right, so SPSS is menu driven. So instead of typing equations into the cells, we're just going to click in the menus and tell SPSS what we want to do. And we will get to those analyses in a separate video. All right, here I just want to orient you guys a little bit with SPSS. All right, another way that SPSS differs from Excel is that we cannot click on these words at the top to change the column headers. All right, these column headers get locked as the variable names, and we are unable to edit them when we're looking at the data. But if you come down here to the bottom, hopefully you can see my mouse waving wildly. Currently, we are in what is called the Data View tab, so we can see all of the data in our data set. And another way that we can manipulate this is we can click on the Variable View. All right, now in the Variable View, we don't see the data anymore. Instead, what we see is the name of all of our variables and then some information that SPSS has guessed about those variables. All right, so it says that they're numeric because they're all of the data is numbers, there are no letters. If there were letters in the response to any of these questions, this would say string instead of numeric. right? It has specified that the column width is 11. There are 0 decimal places on any of the variables. We have no missing data, so this is a complete data set. There's no item non-response. No one has skipped any questions. And then this stuff over here we don't care about, all right? It's gonna guess what kind of response scale we have, and it doesn't matter what it guesses. It's not going to affect anything. We are going to make some changes to these 2 columns in just a minute, but before we do that, I want to show you one more key way that SPSS differs from Excel. Let me actually, I'm pretty sure I have a working one somewhere, so I'll just open a new one. This screen, you don't have to worry about opening yourself because SPSS will open it for you. In fact, you probably have it open already on your computer. It just looks like a big blank white screen. This is called the output screen. All right, and so what the output screen does is whenever we ask SPSS to do something, instead of printing the result in a cell or printing the result on top of our data set the way Excel does, SPSS will do the operation and then it will print the result onto this blank screen. And it doesn't print over itself, it just keeps a running tally of everything that we've asked SPSS to do. Yours might say something like get file, and then it has the name of the SPSS file. It's just indicating that it opened the file that you requested. You guys don't have to follow here, but if we do something like ask for the mean number, actually ear piercing, yeah, ear piercings will work. The mean number of ear piercings that people have, now we can see it has printed the result over here in the output screen. All right, so it has gone through this ear piercings column. It has calculated the minimum answer, all right? So some people said they have no ear piercings. The maximum, some crazy person has 13 ear piercings, and the mean is 2.76, and then we get this variance information over here. All right, but the important thing is if we ask for, means for something else, let's get rid of ear piercings and get mean height, for example, it does not delete the ear piercings information. It leaves that there and it prints below it the mean of this height variable that we asked about. All right, so this output screen stays open the entire time that you're working in SPSS, and it's going to just keep track of everything that we ask SPSS to do. And when you're finished working in SPSS, you should save both your data set and the output screen. They save as 2 different files. All right, you can kind of see how they're going to look when you save them. The go away thing, the data set, I don't know if you guys can see that weird thing open for me. The data set is going to have this blue circle with a red database kind of looking square in the corner, and the output icon is going to be all blue when it saves to your computer, but you'll be able to tell that they're 2 separate files, all right, a data file and an output file. One saves as .sav and one saves as .spv. All right, I don't know what those extensions mean, but they will be 2 different files on your computer. Okay, so these are the key ways that SPSS differs from Excel. And as I mentioned in a separate video, we will go through this worksheet. We'll do all of the analyses together. All right, and when I record the videos for the inferential statistics, we will work through SPSS together for that as well. So if you're interested in learning SPSS, there will be lots of opportunities for you to practice. And as you're practicing, please reference the SPSS user guide that is posted to Blackboard. It's a PDF that I created that just shows screenshot by screenshot how to do each of the tests that we learn about in SPSS, where to find the numbers that we need on this output that gets printed out. And it also, even if you're not learning learning SPSS, it also gives some good information about why do we have to do a specific test to answer a specific research question, and how do we interpret the numbers that get spit out as a result of having conducted that test. All right, so I think it's helpful for learning the statistics, even if you're not doing it in SPSS. Okay, so I want to show you guys one more thing in this video, and that is click down here on the variable view tab. We are going to change something. We're going to change some things in this label and values column. All right, and so what this label and values column, let's just start with label. SPSS is a little picky, all right? And so when you name variables, you cannot have spaces in the variable names, all right? So we could not have named this variable, for example, ear space piercings because SPSS does not like that. All right, and so instead we get this weird abbreviated sort of word that's all mashed together. In the label column, you can rename your variables to variable names that make more sense to you, right? If you like that. You absolutely do not have to. It does not affect any of the data analysis. It's just if you want to label the variables, you can rename them, all right? And so you would rename them over here. You do this just by getting a cursor into the cell in the labels column next to the variable that you're interested in. All right, so we could relabel sex as gender. We could relabel this as number of ear piercings. All right, I might call this have a tattoo, all right, because that's a yes or no question. This one we could call number of CDs. These down here, I'm going to call actual height and height choice. We'll just leave friends what it is, and I'll just leave looks what it is. I don't really have a better word to call those. All right, so renaming variables in the labels column is completely up to you. All right, to be honest, I almost never do it when I'm working on my own data sets because I often name the variables things that make sense to me anyway. Like when you look at these variables, you don't have to have renamed them for them to make sense. But if you have variable names that are not inherently meaningful and you would like to relabel them, this is how you do it. How this shows up, let me find my output screen. All right, so we can see that when we asked for the mean of the height variable, it printed out height right here. If I ask for that mean again, I can see now that it shows in this box where it's showing me the variable names, it's showing the new variable name and the old variable name in parentheses next to it. But when I ask for that height again, now it prints as the mean of actual height instead of that original variable name. Small change, but could be meaningful depending on your original variable names. The place where I would definitely recommend changing information is in this values column. All right, and if you are taking notes, all right, if you have a Post-it note around, write down, we only do this for the nominal response measures. Only for the nominal response measures. In this values column, what you can do is tell SPSS what the nominal coding scheme means. All right, so in the ear piercings category, you don't need to tell SPSS that 1 means 1 ear piercing and 2 means 2 ear piercings, all right, because that's a ratio response scale. The numbers are inherently meaningful. In the gender variable, though, 0 means male and 1 means female, but it could easily be the opposite, all right, that 1 meant male and 0 meant female. And there's no way to know without constantly referring back to this code book to remind yourself, what do the zeros mean and what do the ones mean? All right, currently, if we asked for some frequency information, we wanted to find out what proportion of our sample is male or female, it would print out like this. Whoops. Let me see if I can get this to work up here. I don't know if you guys can see what I'm doing down here. All right, so it currently says that 33.2% of the sample gave an answer of 0 and 66.8% of the sample gave an answer of 1. All right, and so when you pull up that frequency result, you would have to go back to the code book and look up what do the zeros mean, what do the ones mean, so that you could figure out, you know, which gender was more represented in the sample. Okay, how do we turn this off? Okay. So what we can do is, instead of, I guess that's stuck down there now, instead of, sorry, we're all learning, instead of constantly referring back to the code book, we can tell SPSS over here, what do the zeros mean and what do the ones mean? All right, and so the way that we do this, make sure that you're in the row of the nominal response measure. In our case, our first nominal response measure is this gender variable. We're gonna come over here to the values cell and click on it, and this little blue box with 3 dots should pop up. And if you click on those 3 dots, it opens up this menu. And what we're going to tell SPSS is, in this column of data, all right, the column labeled sex, if you see a value of 0, that 0 means that the respondent is male. all right, because that's what our code book says over here. We're going to click add, and now we can see that SPSS has learned 0 equals male. And we're going to tell it that if it sees a value of 1, that 1 means that the respondent was female. And now SPSS knows that 1 equals female, and we click OK. And we know that SPSS has received this information because we can see that now instead of saying none in the values column, it shows the beginning of this matrix that 0 equals male and 1 equals female. Let me show you why this matters. If we ask again for this frequency information, now where previously it said 68 zeros and 137 ones, now it says 68 males and 137 females. It does not change the result of the analysis. It just makes the analysis easier to interpret, all right, because those nominal variables are labeled. The category labels show up in these tables that get printed out, instead of just seeing the zeros and ones and having to constantly go back and look up what did 0 mean, what did 1 mean. We're just making life easier for ourselves. All right, and so this is why we only do this for the nominal variable, because we're only doing it when the number corresponds to some category membership. We don't need to identify it for counts, like how many ear piercings you have or how many CDs you own. And we don't need to do it for this looks versus personality variable either. We only need to do it when we're identifying category membership. All right, so we can do it for this tattoo variable. Click on the cell, click the 3 dots in the blue square. For the tattoo variable, a value of 0 means the person does not have a tattoo. All right, so I'm going to write no tattoo to be perfectly explicit and click add. And then a value of 1 means yes, they do have a tattoo. And I'm going to click add. All right, and click OK. All right, our last nominal variable is this friends variable down here. All right, so I'm going to go to the friends row. I'm going to click on the values box, click those blue dots. A value of 0 means they make friends more easily with members of the opposite sex. So I'm going to type opposite gender, click add. A value of 1 means they make friends more easily with people of the same gender, click add. And a value of 2 means they make friends with members of both genders equally. All right, there's no difference in the genders in terms of who they make friends with. And we're going to click add and click OK. All right, and so now for only the nominal variables, we have in this values column, we have told SPSS, here's our coding scheme. All right, here's what these numbers correspond to as far as category labels. All right, and if we go back to data view, you can't see that we've done any of that. All right, the data set looks exactly the same, but what we've done is we've just made our lives a little bit easier, all right, when we go to do the data analysis later. It'll be easier to interpret the results because things will be properly labeled in the tables, and you'll be able to see that better when we make the next video. All right, so if you have worked in SPSS to this point, I would recommend saving this file somewhere where it's easy for you to find. All right, I am not going to save mine because I already have it saved places. Well, we'll just save it and replace this because we did that work in it. You do not need at this point to save the output file because your output probably has nothing in it of any importance, right? And so there's no point in saving it because you're not going to need to look back at it later. But in the future, if you are practicing doing data analysis in SPSS, especially if you are practicing doing the data analysis for the final paper, you might definitely want to look back at that. And so then I would recommend saving that file. All right, so if I can figure out how to turn this off, this video will be complete, and we will pick up the rest of that worksheet in the next video. All right, have a good night, guys.